perhaps the king might make a rather loose reference to family. Because if you mention the Sussexes by name, I mean, I'm sure he may love to sort of extend the hand of friendship towards, but if you mention them by name, it immediately becomes the thing in the Christmas broadcast that everyone talks about. And what they're trying to do now, the overriding thing that the palace is trying to do now, is to lower the temperature.
And we're turning now to a different story with a royal touch. It occurs that the problems encountered by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex as they struggled with their position in line of succession could have perhaps been avoided if only there had been a determined effort to slim down the royal family. Well, earlier I spoke to Valentine Low, who's the Times' royal correspondent, and asked him to explain more about the story and who he was listening to who had been discussing this as a solution.
One of Harry and Meghan's main problems was the way that, although he was not in direct line of succession, because William was always going to become Prince of Wales and then King, when he married Meghan, they were incredibly popular. And the way Harry saw it, when he married Meghan, in the documentary, he said he described them as a supporting act. But after the Australian tour of 2018, they were, in Harry's words, stealing the limelight, doing the job better than the person who's born to do this. And he saw that as a tension. As the way he put it, that upsets people. It shifts the balance. Now, what a couple of constitutional writers have pointed out is that this is the lot of younger sons in royal families everywhere. They are constrained by the rules of the royal family. They have to live within the gilded cage. But they're never going to become the number one royal. They're ultimately dispensable. And these writers, who are called Robert Hazel and Bob Morris, and they write for the UCL Constitution Unit, University College London Constitution Unit, so they know their stuff about how royal families work. They say that a lot of royal families in Europe have slimmed down the number of people who are actually working royals. Now, this is something that King Charles wants to do, but we haven't yet seen evidence about how he wants to do it. But they say that, if we in Britain had slimmed down the royal family, that in a sense might have solved Harry's problems, because they could have been freed if they're no longer part of this tight-knit working royal family. They could have been freed to pursue independent lives.
And you say that this is the way it's done, obviously, here. Are there examples, and that King Charles has long been known to want to slim down the royal family here, but are there examples of where that's happened and hasn't caused, I suppose, even more of a rift amongst a family?
Well, in Spain and also in Norway, they've got very slimmed down royal families. But, so it's just four people, the monarch and their spouse and the heir to the throne and their spouse. But, when Queen Margaret of Denmark this year stripped four of her grandchildren of their royal titles, it caused a serious rift in the royal family there. The branch of the family that was being booted out, as it were not desperately happy about it. But what the Danish royal palace said, that it would enable the children to be able to shape their own lives without being limited by the sort of special considerations and duties that a formal affiliation with the royal house of Denmark would involve. But there's another point, very interesting point, that the writers of this blog post on the Constitution Unit website make. They say that if young royals are going to be free to live lives as private citizens, that will mean they will have to pursue an independent career. So you've got to tell them in advance, in the words of the writers, before they reach an age when they become so attached to a privileged life of service that it'd be painful for them to renounce it. So it's fine. It's liberating to be allowed to live a life as a private citizen. and have a job like anyone else. But you've got to know that's coming. Otherwise, you might think, oh, I've got rather used to this cozy royal life.
It's really interesting. And currently there is quite a grey area about what's acceptable as a job whilst being a royal and what isn't there?
Yes. I mean, if you think about Viscount Linley, who's now Lord Snowdon, the son of Princess Margaret, he was able to pursue a career, and that was fine. Didn't upset anyone. But when Prince Edward was trying to pursue his career in television production, he was subjected to certain amount of criticism for that. Not least because people thought that he was using his royal kudos to pursue his career. It's very tricky, and it's a very delicate balance. And if you think of another example of Peter Phillips, who's sort of quite far removed from the line of succession, when he did those advertisements that went out in China, television advertisements, advertising milk, of all things, he was seen to be exploiting his sort of royal status, such as it was, not very high royal status, but he was seen to be exploiting that and came in for a certain amount of criticism. So it's tricky. It's never going to be easy.
Well, unfortunately, the problems haven't been avoided this way, and they only seem to be growing, and these rifts seem to be getting more and more entrenched. We learned today that the Sussexes want a royal summit to address their grievances. Perhaps you could explain what they're calling for and whether you think it's realistic they might have this summit.
Well, to answer your question in reverse order, I don't think it's realistic. It's kind of interesting they're asking for it when they've had sort of 2 years or so in which to ask for a summit to have their grievances discussed. And it's only now that the television documentary series has come out that they're saying that. One of the prompts for this suggestion being made was the way that the Queen's former Lady in Waiting, Lady Susan Hussey, had a meeting with Nosy Fulani at Buckingham Palace in order to be able to apologise for the remarks that she made at a palace reception, all about where do you really come from. And the Sussexes people are saying, well, if an apology in a meeting can be arranged for them, why couldn't it be arranged for us? It's probably sort of quite a different situation. And also, that wasn't the palace apologising; it was Lady Susan apologising. We all know the grievances of the Sussexes. Harry believing that they didn't protect Meghan, the palace didn't protect Meghan. Harry believing that various households briefed against him. These are long-standing grievances. They're not new. When we heard them on Netflix this week, it didn't come as a surprise. They should say that. So whether anything useful could come of this, I don't know. But they know how to get hold of the king. So for them to be, as we're making the suggestion through the media, also seems odd because they could ask for such a meeting anytime they liked.
Yes, sources have said, haven't they? They know where he is. They know where to find him if they want to ask him anything. Talking about where he is and talking about the king, we also understand that he is expected to address Harry and Meghan in his Christmas Day message. Do we have any?
Well, that's been reported somewhere in the Sunday Telegraph. I'm not necessarily sure that's true. I certainly wasn't confirming that today. And I've got my doubts. I have actually spoken to someone today, a sort of former palace insider, who questions that. They said if they were advising them, they would say not to mention them by name. So perhaps the king might make a rather loose reference to family. Because if you mention the Sussexes by name, I mean, I'm sure he may love to sort of extend the hand of friendship towards, but if you mention my name, it immediately becomes the thing in the Christmas broadcast that everyone talks about. And what they're trying to do now, the overriding thing that the palace is trying to do now, is to lower the temperature. They really don't want to kind of fan the flames of this. So if you just make friendly noises without being too specific, I think in a way that's possibly more likely than saying something about them by name.
And just lastly, friendly noises. Do you think we'll hear friendly noises when it comes to the coronation? Are they expected to be invited and to attend?
There have certainly been reports suggesting they will be invited. I think it would be incredibly inflammatory for them actually not to be invited, because then the Sussexes could complain, say we weren't invited. Whether they'll come or not, I don't know. It'll be tricky if they do come, because yes, again, it'll be the thing that everyone writes about. They're kind of damned if they do, damned if they don't. But I think I'm certainly in no doubt that they will be invited.
That was Valentine Low, the Times' royal correspondent, talking to me a little earlier.